Welcome back to the show, guys. I have a challenge for you today. And it's a challenge I've done or am doing myself. Could you go 72 hours with no calories? Just 3 days, no food. Could you do it? I'm talking about a water fast. And why am I challenging you to do it? Why am I in day 2 of my own water fast? Because of Gaza. I think you're a lot like me in that you're probably just sick and tired of seeing these horrific images of families starving to death, of children in their parents' arms, their parents helpless to help them as they are the most vulnerable and are dying out of forced starvation, a form of torture. So I thought to myself, what could I do that might actually make a difference? Or if nothing else, what could I do to become a better person? And ironically enough, gain some health benefits along the way. And I decided to do a 3-day water fast, and I'm challenging each and every one of you to do it with me. Now, to discuss water fasting, its benefits, its safety, and then also to talk about and help us reconnect with our humanity and our empathy for others, I have a very special guest. His name is Dr. Ali Shehata. He has decades of experience as a family practitioner and ER doctor and has practiced medicine all over the world. So without further ado, I want to bring him on, and I hope you guys will benefit from our conversation. I want to welcome Dr. Ali Shehata. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ali. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, brother Isa. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm so glad to have you on the show today. As you know, I'm in day 2, around that 36-hour mark of a 3-day water fast. And I'm doing this because I saw maybe about a month ago, an elected official named Randy Fine, just a morbidly obese individual. And it was so crass when he was talking about the starvation of Gaza. He literally said something like, let them starve. So I looked him up and I saw like rumors that even like AIPAC was distancing themselves from him after this. And then I saw that maybe taken back. So I think they're still supporting him. But my point was, I was just like, a guy that's that obese, he couldn't go a day without food, just water. And I kept thinking like, maybe that's what we all need. We need to kind of give up food for a few days just to feel our humanity again. And so I wanted to just ask you briefly, as a family doctor, ER doctor, what are your thoughts on, water fasting, the 3-day mark, and maybe health benefits associated with that? And then after that, let's talk about, the famine and the forced starvation of Gaza.
Absolutely. Water fasting has become very prominent in recent years as people are studying longevity. And so there's all this kind of anti-aging material out there. And this is one of the things that's associated with that. And that's because of the fact that when we do these prolonged fasts, one of the things that we will experience is autophagy, which is essentially what I try to tell my patients, or how I explain it to my patients, like spring cleaning for the body. The body goes in and it recycles older cells that aren't as efficient. And so it makes the entire body more efficient, and that results in longevity. So that's one of the major benefits of incorporating a routine prolonged fast, whether you do it 2 times a month, once a quarter, something like that. But you certainly won't, it's certainly something that I encourage patients to do under medical supervision. Some of the other benefits, of course, weight loss. Dramatic amounts of weight loss, and it's because you are increasing your calorie deficit at that point in time. We also see insulin sensitivity benefits. We even see cognitive benefits. And for people who have done any type of prolonged fasting, because we don't really realize, I think, how much time we spend daily thinking about food, planning food, and talking about food. And so as a result, when you know that's not going to happen, I'm not going to be eating for the next couple of days, then that's all time that you can recover. And the additional aspect of that is we all have felt that post-lunch or post-dinner kind of, sedation. People eat their dinner and they kind of fall asleep in front of the TV, that whole, kind of concept. And so when you're not getting that huge amount of, you're not getting any calories, in fact, it has this clarity that comes with it in the mind, and increased cognitive behavior or performance that most people experience. So without a doubt, it's something that it is extraordinarily healthy when done properly. In terms of the timing, if we look at it scientifically, the benefits of prolonged fasting begin around the 36-hour mark. Every human body is different, And so but that's generally where the vast majority of the human population is going to be getting benefit. And that's when we're going to start seeing all of these benefits we're talking about, the increase in some sensitivity, the body, going into autophagy, the cognitive performance improvements, the longevity benefits, all of that starts to happen around 36 hours. Now, once you kind of hit into 72 hours, you're getting the majority of the benefits at that point in time without some of the health risks. When we go too long, if we, people who go out, usually it's around a week, which is very hard for a lot of people to kind of imagine. Not having any caloric intake for an entire week is very difficult. But at that point in time, we're starting to see muscle breakdown. We're starting to see, the effects of starvation begin. And that's kind of what we're seeing, in Gaza right now and in other parts of the world. Not only in Gaza. I mean, certainly thankfully there is a spotlight on Gaza right now because there should be a spotlight. What's happening over there is unacceptable in the world that we live in today. If we're going to say that we have advanced so far as a human race, how could something like this be happening? How could a manufactured famine exist? And that's, but it's not the only famine. It's important to remember that there are many other parts of the world, Sudan, for example, where there is a famine existing at this time, but it's just not getting the attention right now.
And one of the things that I keep thinking about is how here in America, especially, but maybe generally in the West, you got someone like Randy Fine, who's probably got a ton of health issues for being overfed. And then at the exact same time, he's callous about people literally starving to death. You talked about muscle tissue starting to break down. And I just saw a report from Dropsite News that came out this morning. It said, in the past 24 hours, 6 more people, including 1 child, were starved to death by the blockade by Israel. This brings the total to 367 deaths, of which 131 were children. And this was all from malnutrition caused by Israel's weaponization of food and aid as a weapon of war. And that's only covering like the last 4 weeks. I mean, from the very beginning of Israel's campaign against Gaza, they said they were going to cut off the fuel, the food, the water. And then, of course, the last month has been particularly brutal with like the distribution sites having people being shot up and everything. But this idea of reconnecting with our humanity through feeling some hunger pains ourselves, I wanted to ask you to kind of describe what happens, especially to children, when they go, like you said, more than the 72 hour or, above a week worth of malnutrition and starvation. What happens to the body?
I mean, to make it as simple as possible for our viewers to understand, the body starts to eat itself. Okay, there's really no other way of looking at it. It's looking for anything that it can break down, and so the body starts to prioritize, certain functions over others. And so it's saying, okay, in order to survive a little bit longer, I'm not going to need this, and the body starts to break that organ down. So what you start to see is liver failure as a result, because when we talk, there's a lot of discussion these days about ketogenesis, especially with the keto diet, and people. So ketogenesis is essentially getting your fuel, instead of getting it through glucose or sugar, you're getting it through the breakdown of, so what happens is the liver stores fat, and it's able through this process of ketogenesis to convert that fat back into glucose. So you break down fat in order to create glucose so the body can continue to function. And so at a certain point in time, the liver itself breaks down, the kidney starts to break down. And so that's what we're starting to see in these in places like Gaza, that people, they hit the point of no return. And that's one of the most important things to understand. A lot of people believe, well, okay, if it gets really, really bad, then, we're going to have an intervention. And like, that's not going to necessarily work, because a lot of these people, as you've already alluded to, a lot of them are dying right now, and there are more people who are going to die, a lot more people who are going to die. Even if that blockade was lifted today, there's going to be a number of deaths because of the body hitting that point of no return.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people talking about like high calorie food packs that are especially designed to be easy to digest and stuff. But what we're talking about is people who would need to be like in an ICU, right? Like hooked up to IVs and stuff. And that's just to prevent death. But if I'm right, and I want you to you know, be as morbid as we need to be to really understand this accurately. But the long-term effects of even saving the life of a child who's been starved for a prolonged period is not something you can shake off with nutrition, right?
No, it's so there is a traumatic component of this as well, and so without a doubt, anybody who has gone through this type of torture, and there's really no other word for it, it's torture. The body may recover with proper nutrition and, as you mentioned, ICU care, IVs if necessary, and in most cases it will be necessary for these types of people because you've got the gastrointestinal system is no longer functioning normally, and so its ability to absorb nutrients is no longer, it's not normal, and that's why sometimes it has to be given through an IV. But the impact of the loss of life, and so a lot of these people have literally watched their family starve to death, and that's not something that you'll ever shake off. That's not a memory. So many of us have had the experience of watching a loved one maybe die in a hospital, okay, where maybe they're older, okay, maybe it's a parent or a grandparent, and so they've had the blessing of being able to live their lives, okay, and so they've had cancer or they've had heart disease or something like that, and we're there in the hospital, we're watching them as they kind of live their last moments, and that's still traumatic for a lot of people. It's still extraordinarily traumatic, and it's something that they can't forget when they go back and they relive those moments. It's traumatic. Now imagine that you're watching your own child die, and you can't do a thing about it because there's nothing you have. You can't. If you could cut a piece of yourself off and give it to them to survive, you would do it, but it doesn't work that way. And so it's a very, very different situation to watch, someone that you care about being killed slowly in this manner, and that's where it doesn't make any sense because they talk about the thought process behind it. I don't know what kind of humane thought process or human thought process could be behind such a thing, but the calorie restrictions. Oh, you only need this much to live, and is that what we've come to as a human race? That now we're calculating. You only require this much to be able to live. Okay, and that's what we're talking about. What kind of a life? Living like laying down in a tent, just waiting for another bomb to drop or what have you. It's profoundly upsetting and frustrating and really just removes hope.
That point you're talking about, the calorie restricted because that's been for decades of how much the food and supplies they live in. And then one of the common ways to try to push back on the propaganda side, from Israel's propaganda, I think they call it Hasbara or something like that. But they were saying, oh, these kids in the pictures had pre-existing conditions, and that means they weren't truly starving. And I remember one of the cases that was famous that they blamed that for was the pre-existing condition he had was brought on by malnutrition.
Yes.
So
these things are just that was created at another phase of this exact same torture.
So, and you're talking about like mental trauma, which has been proven like by Holocaust survivors, by PTSD patients, that it can be passed on to their offspring, their children. But what I was referring to in my original question was like, doesn't a certain point of starvation or malnutrition of children, doesn't it actually affect their long-term, even like brain development and potential for growth?
Because you have to remember that as children, so why do we talk about, fortifying foods in the United States, for children? And why do we talk about the importance of vitamins and the importance of, a balanced diet is so that a child can grow up given all the resources that they need to properly grow up. And so when we look at the brain, okay, so as a child is growing, their brain is getting bigger. And how does that brain get bigger? It gets bigger through specific fatty acids. And so it's fat that has to, be converted into nerve tissue and brain tissue. So if they're not getting that, okay, then their brains aren't going to grow. So they're going to all have cognitive deficits as they're, when they get older, that are going to be, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's going to be very, very difficult for them to be able to recover from that. And so again, God is great. And so we never leave off there's amazing things that happen, when faith is part of the equation. But nonetheless, it's like, is that what we're doing? Is that we're doing a human trial on 2 million people right now to see, okay, what happens if you calorie restrict the child and they don't have the ability to, grow proper brain tissue? What happens to them? Can that be reversed? Is that like, where we are as a human race? And that's the thing that I can't understand. Like you wouldn't, if we had, talking about Randy Fine, if Randy Fine had said that about, school lunches in the United States, that, children don't need to eat, that, if you don't have, if your parents, didn't contribute enough, or they didn't live their lives right, so that, that they can afford to, send a child to school with lunch, and that child just doesn't deserve to eat. How would that be viewed in the United States? But we're doing, we're allowing something to happen that's so much worse. And it's that's sort of the thing that's frustrating for so many people around the world right now who are watching this. They're saying, you can just stop this, just let them eat, just allow the food there's literally thousands of trucks of aid, of food aid. People have spent money, they've donated money so these people can eat. And those trucks are literally waiting outside of blockades, waiting outside of checkpoints, and the food rots. So like, people are donating money, and that money just goes to waste because it's not being allowed in. So all people are saying is just allow the food to go into these people. Just let them eat. The political differences can be solved in other ways, but starving civilians and starving children is, there's no way that this can be justified.
Yeah, and I want to respect your time and let you get back to work and treating your patients, but I wanted to close on that thought, because a couple of times you mentioned, is that what the human race has gotten to, what our society is allowing? And that's why I wanted to make this a challenge. So just 3 days, just water, black coffee, plain tea, no cream, sugar, nothing added to it. Just see how you feel after that. And if you're more empathetic, because, you talked about the blockade of the food and the food rotting. I've seen so many videos of families from Israel, like out doing human roadblocks with their bodies to prevent aid trucks getting into Gaza months ago. And now there's just a full-on government policy. And I bring that up just because if we're able to turn a blind eye to that, I mean, I know the videos of starving children are hard to look at, and it's our natural instinct to like close the browser or turn away. But we got to do something, because at the end of the day, how are we going to look our children in the face and say we were silent when this happened? And so anyway, I'm hoping you'll join me on a 3-day water fast sometime soon.
Pleasure.
And
Pleasure.
I also wanted to say, any final words you have? I know people can't get medical advice through a YouTube video, but just final thoughts. And I want to give the last word overall and assure my audience that I'm going to include ways for people to find out about the amazing work you do in the description below.
Thank you. My final thoughts are not of a medical nature, but my final thoughts are an appeal to people of religion worldwide. I begin, with people who are from the Jewish backgrounds, because we know, and we've all spoken. I think you've spoken to so many people. There's so many beautiful and kind and humane Jewish people that have risked so much, of their own in terms of their professional careers, their lives, to speak up against this, to speak out and say, this does not represent us. This does not represent Judaism. And there's actually a really beautiful clip. I'm sure you saw it with Jon Stewart, where he was speaking to another very prominent Jewish, yes. Where they talked about, this doesn't represent us. When I speak out to, people from the Christian background, as well, and I say, we all understand that, that there is this desire, for, to see Jesus, and this desire for rapture, and, to kind of gain God's pleasure. But my question to people is that, okay, is this, do we believe, if we believe in God, all right, and we believe in God's justice, and we believe in God's judgment, do we really feel safe that to do something like this to other human beings and think that that will not be visited upon us at some point in our lives? And that's the whole thing, is that what we don't realize is that, the wheel of fortune, as I like to call it, it changes. Okay. So the wheel of fortune is always turning. I'm not talking about the game show. I'm talking about just like the concept of, that fortune changes. Okay. So today you might be on top, but 10 years from now, you might not be in that same place. And maybe you might be wishing for that humanity that's being asked of you today. And so I'm asking people of faith, of all faiths, to look into their hearts and, leave off all of the politicized, language and all of this, this nonsense that's become, inserted into this humanitarian situation, and just ask, is this something that God would be pleased with? Is this something that God, would ever ask of us, to starve other human beings, to cut off human, resources to another group of people? And if the answer to that is yes, that you believe that this is something that God would ask of people to do, then I think it's time for you to revisit, your faith, and to revisit the understanding of faith, because God is love, and God is just, and God is beautiful, and God is good, and none of what's happening right now is good. Nothing over there is good. Nobody can say that this is good, and so that's why my appeal is to people of faith to kind of go back to their faith and go back to their understanding of God, to say, we can't allow this to happen. We have to do everything that we possibly can, because, when we do things like this, eventually it's going to be revisited upon us. And again, all people of faith, they understand that. People who read the Bible, people who read any type of scripture, they understand this. What goes around comes around. However you want to put it, karma, all the different terms for it. You can't do this to others and think that you will just walk peacefully on the earth and nothing will come to you. So maybe a human being cannot do that to the people who are making this possible right now, but God is great, and that's what I ask people, just to kind of reconnect with their faith and reconnect with their humanity, and say that this is going way too far.
Thank you for that. And I know, because you're too polite, you won't call out our own community. But one of the reasons I decided to do this was being inspired by groups like Not in Our Name and Jewish Voice for Peace, and so many Jewish friends of mine that I have, especially the youth, who have been on the front lines more than the Muslim community. So it's time for all of us to speak up, regardless of our background, and especially as Muslims. I think a lot of times we think about it through this idea of we'll be seen as just advocating for our own. And, how did we let that be a crutch? Because every community advocates for their own. And sure. In this case, advocating for the starving women and children and innocent people in Gaza is literally just restoring humanity. So thank you for your time. I'm going to put together a flyer with a little info about a 3-day water fast challenge. And I hope everyone, if you found benefit in this video, you'll share it with somebody and accept the challenge yourself. And when you share it with that other person, ask them to do 3 days as well. 3 days is nothing. It'll make you healthier. You'll probably feel better. And if nothing else, you'll be able to empathize with, people who are suffering in a profound way. Dr. Shehata, thank you so much for your time today. You hope you have a blessed week ahead of you. And until next time, we need to talk about your project, Fam Cinema, and a few other things as well.
I look forward to it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh.
Isa. Okay. Isa? Yes. Isa Galloway.
Isa Galloway.
Isa Galloway.
Isa Galloway.
Isa Galloway, convert to Islam, defines the mission.
Kind of a show that will put people on the edge of their seat.
Because it leads to the future, and a more sophisticated approach.